Old places, old people, old friends, right? Old houses. Places like an onion, you know an onion? It has many different layers, Yangcong, right? It has a layer and a layer and a layer. The longer you go to a place, the more layers you understand. For 35 years, I was a college professor and a high school teacher. Every year, when I was a teacher, I would bring high school students to China. I did that for about 15 years. Lately, I have run a program called the China Folk House, which is a house from Yunnan that we moved to West Virginia. So students for the past 5 years have come. So if we think about it, students during the year, they're on computers, they're on their phones, they don't get a chance to actually make something that's physical, that's tangible. And they love the idea that they are part of something bigger than themselves. And when they learn by doing, they remember it and they become part of it. They internalize it. I'm a strong advocate for experiential learning. And I brought them to Yunnan because I thought it was the most interesting place, most beautiful place, and the ideal place to do a student program. Actually inscribes a kind of Confucian hierarchy behind you. And I have students learn about Chinese history and culture through architecture, through looking at houses. We can show people traditional techniques of building. So a minju, right, what we would call a vernacular house. A house is a tremendously rich text to understand everyday life. That is made for people to live in, it's made for them to work in, it's made for them to have family relations and relations with people in the community. All of those different practices and beliefs and values are all reflected in the house. There will be a test. When we go in, I will randomly choose one of you, and I'll say what kind of building this is. You'll be able to tell me. This is not only an example of Mingguo, of the nationalist period architecture, but it's also the home of a famous official whose name was Zhou Zhongyue. And he was, in fact, the first governor of Yunnan. Bai style of house that I'm going to ask you what it is when we come in. And then an older house has lived through so many periods of history, and each layer of history gets inscribed and written into the house. So a house is like, an old house is like an old person. It's filled with memories and stories that you can learn from. Come on in. What style of building is this, Audrey? It is a folk house. It is a minju. But what particular kind of Bai architecture is this? Remember the different styles of architecture we studied? Coco?
Oh, I don't remember the Chinese name, but 5 Skywells.
5 Skywells. Does anyone know the Chinese for it besides Jack?
I think is it 四方五天井.
大家跟我一起说四合五天井. 五天井. So she's saying the other style, of course, is the 3 sides and 1 reflecting wall, 三方一照壁. And she was pointing out the sun, where the sun comes in and reflects off the reflecting wall that brings light into the courtyard. And then she said if you're a little wealthier and you had the space, you could also make 4 sides, right? And then you could have the 4 sides with the 5 skywells. So there are 2 functions of a jiaobi. One is to, of course, reflect light into the courtyard. The other is to protect the house by keeping it clean, keeping it from outside forces coming in and polluting the house. We study houses as one of the main windows into understanding local culture, because a house is like a text. notice that this building is a little bit off square. It's a little off square. It doesn't directly face the gate of the town. And in fact, if you look at Jianchuan, it has excellent feng shui. So what you'll find is that when we walked around, there were very few shizilukou. So the whole town is designed with this kind of blocking of forces so that the flow of wind that's coming off of Laojunshan, that's coming off these mountains, the wind comes in and it's blocked and it has to go around. So it's partly just this kind of what would we call it? Landscape design to conform to the flows of wind and water. And we think about that as, oh, that's just a belief. But if you think about how the sun moves, it provides shade in the summer and it provides sunlight in the winter. So there's practical levels to something like that, the orientation of a house, as well as cultural meaning. Oh, I think as much as possible when you do a historical restoration, you should try to reproduce the same structure, the same feeling. Is this Sanjiangbingliu, right? This is where the Jinsha that becomes the Yangtze River, and the Nujiang, which becomes the Salween River, and the Lansanjiang, which is the Mekong River, they all flow very close together. This is the Sanjiangbingliu region of northwest Yunnan. This is an example of this is the Dogong, right? Dogong. This is how you write. So for you guys taking notes in your notebook, you guys, this is Dogong. So this is the tiered eaves that holds up the roof. This is that very, very distinctive architectural style that's been perfected here in Jianchuan. She also emphasized that when you look from the outside, it seems to be 3 levels, but actually on the inside there are 4 levels here, and that's somehow done through hiding the one hidden level is hidden by the Dogong. Like the idea of passing knowledge down from one generation to the next. The idea of teaching through symbols and ornamentation in the house. I think all of those are wonderful traditions that we can learn from today. So this place has been designated as one of the earliest sites of Bronze Age civilization in Yunnan. Not only learning the craft, but learning the history of the person. How did the craft change over time? What are the experiences that the craft master has? So this particular carving in the grotto is interesting because of the architectural elements that it reflects, showing that there was lots of different influences. You have the Chinese Dogong up here. You have this Buddhist symbols along the top. So they look at this and see all sorts of different architectural influences. So you see these are decorative pieces, right, that are done with that deep 3D carving. And they put these up above in the zoulang, in the passageway. And these are like ornamentation. Those are structural. These are ornamental. I think every teacher who teaches history, right, will tell you that you have to go to the place. You can't read it in a book. So I can tell people about that. I can show them pictures about that. I don't think they can really get the full flavor. You have to have the experience to really understand.
That beam actually stabilizes the entire house, which is very cool. In the folk house, you have a beam that has a dragon carved on the end, and that's to symbolize like safety and like security. And underneath that, you have an elephant, which is sort of to symbolize stabilization. But in the architecture itself, the elephant beam actually secures the whole structure together.
I heard about this. This won a prize. This won an architecture prize. The idea that you have different cultural traditions to conform to different physical landscapes makes Northwest Yunnan the very best place to do the kinds of projects we do. And some of these, some of the roads were actually, and they would make a hole in the cliff face and they would jam a log in there, a beam, and then they built a suspended road that would go over these river canyons, incredible, scary places. And horses would go on that. The Northwest has the greatest biodiversity, and it also has the greatest ethnic and cultural diversity. That's what makes it special, I think. The first time I came to Northwest Yunnan, I came to visit the Linden Center, which was just opening, and we started to talk about doing educational programs in the Dali region.
Our idea was to really take you into a China that, again, went beyond just the recent 30-year veneer or changes that we see in the big cities, and maybe experience what China was like and where it's come from. So you would understand that the successes now also harken back to some of what we see here in the rural areas.
我们已经跟 John Flower 已经跟黄老师认识16年。我们想做什么？是想怎么把中国原有的一些最有吸引力的东西，让国外更认可、更意识到中国的那个文化的部分。
The idea that you have different cultural traditions to conform to different physical landscapes makes Northwest Yunnan the very best place to do the kinds of projects we do. And that you can understand by actually living inside it. We only have so much time in life, so we choose a place that works the best. I don't just tour them around. I have them do things like apprentice with craftsmen. Not only learning the craft, but learning the history of the person.
我认为最好的民间交流呢，就是人与人之间的沟通。我们在做美国学生的访问团的时候，我们非常的注重把他们带到不同的人群当中去，跟当地人交流，让他们跟我们的学生近距离的接触，面对面的交谈。
This is so good. Thank you so much. Did you just draw this?
No, I found it.
Oh.
And then out here in Zhenchuan, there's still people keeping traditional ways. So I'll tell them it's like all the mix of old and new, and how it's so interesting to see how it develops together.
I think the most important thing I should teach them is to stay in one place and slow down and try to learn from the people living there. Don't be in a hurry. Keep your mind open. It's better to 生根开花 than it is to 走马观花. So we looked at those baskets there, and I was saying, where is that place by the lake? And he said, Heyicheng. Heyicheng is where they do bamboo weave. 林老师你好，谢谢你有我们的学生很激动有这个机会啊。So you can see the traditional designs, and then you can also adapt them. You don't have to exactly copy them. You can adapt it. But I think it's worthwhile to look at some of the designs that they have, because they're all very culturally significant. Yeah. Not big long strokes.
It was kind of difficult, but I think when I just went slow, it worked out well.
I think it's important to understand like the beautiful nature around this area, but it's also important to preserve it. So I think I just want to show how beautiful it is and kind of encapsulate how nature is so important to this community, and I guess like show that it's essential to the people and the community that live here.
今天你们过来的目的是来体验这个古法手工造纸啊。好，现在我们开始第一个步骤的体验，叫做撕树皮。很棒啊，撕得非常的细啊。
You can make two kinds. You can choose
哪一种
which
啊？
one you want to make.
把住身体的平衡啊。
I think this paper making experience is amazing because not only did I learn how to do this at China Folk House where I have worked or where I have volunteered for 4 years, I also can be able to do this in China, which is something that I've never thought of doing.
摇起来就要拖起来，你不要上去，怎么样下去？你下次怎么样下去？
I've had a really good time doing the paper making traditional style because I have a little bit of background with it, but this is the first time being able to actually see from like a master in the flesh and have them kind of give me tips on how to improve paper making process.
All of China, the most traditional crafts and the traditional practices are best preserved in Yunnan. In all of Yunnan, the best preservation of craft is in the Northwest. So I've been to different places in China and I agree. Many people in America think of China as one thing, but actually China is an incredibly diverse place. Slowing down and taking time to live there, not just to visit there. That's why you have to make a choice.
老板可以便宜点吗？
最低价格了，我们。
You want to bargain for
Yes,
okay, go ahead.
这个15块。
It's for good luck, right?
Yeah.
It's full. Yeah.
So
Good
it's
luck.
not to wear.
Which one looks good? What they do is when they do that, your only hope is that they can do this.
I like Northwest Yunnan because the everyday life of the people still has many traditional crafts, traditional practices. I'm old-fashioned. I think instead of going many different places, it's better to go to one place and to go there many times to create relationships with people that last for a long time. And that's when you really start to understand a place. Their way of doing things was naturally sustainable. So I think we can look to the past as a guide for the future. Sometimes people like to go to new places, they travel, and they think that new experiences are the best. I think going back to a place and having relationships is always the best. One week, I can't imagine what you could learn in 1 week. You would just see everything as different without really understanding it, you know? So my name is John Flower. When I first came to China in 1991, I would rather be narrow but deep. That's much more important. Yeah. I'm sure there's a Chengyu about that.
应该是句谚语吧，应该是一句谚语，但是我想不出来。
Okay, you think of it and then you send it to me on WeChat. Okay.
Okay.